out free estimates to my clients and potential clients. So first of all, it's our human nature to be overly optimistic about our projections of the future. Therefore, it's extremely difficult to estimate the cost of a job, especially without a design. People respond to incentives, and the client and the contractor has opposing incentives. So this is usually where the conflict starts. So I'd like you to join me in exploring all these opposing incentives, and hopefully we can figure something out to have a better project, better outcome. So I'm gonna talk about three things. One is design and planning. Two is the scope of work, and third is the contract. So first of all, why do we need a design? Why do we need to make plans? It's like, for me, planning is very important. It's like going somewhere without a map, or going to a party without getting the address. See, we have to begin with the end in mind. Imagine you're sailing a boat and you don't have a destination. You're just floating away somewhere, just waiting for something to happen, or I don't know, like you're flying up in the air, you're in the airplane and you don't have a destination. It's the same thing. We need to have a design and a plan, as simple as a washroom job, as simple as a kitchen job. Basement's a little complicated. It's always good to have a design and a plan. It's easier to count the scope of work. It's easy to estimate how much materials we're gonna use, especially nowadays. There's 3D plans. I mean, I can build 3D drawings. It's easier nowadays. So I don't know why people don't make designs. They don't invest time, like couple of hours, couple of days work is gonna save you a lot of headaches in the future. That's why people struggle to estimate, to price a job, because there's no design in place, there's no tangible, there's no drawings. Make design, make a plan, as simple as what kind of light fixtures we're gonna use, what kinds of faucet, what kind of tiles we're gonna use, the layout. Is it a 2-inch by 3-inch tile? Is it a foot by foot? Small details like those can make a big difference in your project, especially when you know ahead of time what kind of materials you're gonna use. You can order ahead. Like when you order a kitchen cabinet, it can take 2 to 3 weeks before they arrive. So you have to know, like, what size, what kind of countertops you're gonna use, what type of stones you're gonna use. Is it granite? Is it marble? So on and so forth. So what kind of lights you're gonna use? Is it pot lights? Is it simple thing? What kind of handles you're gonna use? What kind of doors you're gonna use on your cabinets? Is it shaker style? Is it, what kind of materials you're gonna use in your wood? Is it MDF? Is it plywood? Though these things matter, and once you plan it out ahead of time, especially when you have measurements, and you lay out everything, job's gonna be smooth sailing. That's another thing. When you plan things out, how much you gonna spend for demolition, how much you gonna pay your crew, how long it's gonna take. These are the considerations we need to think about when you. I always encourage my clients to let's spend a couple of days, couple of hours planning and designing the job before the hammer even hits before even we do demolition, before we start breaking things, because otherwise we're saving a lot of headaches. We're actually saving a lot of headaches if we plan ahead. So you know that saying, failed to plan is like planning to fail. Keep that in mind. All right, so next thing I want to discuss is the scope of work. So basically, scope of work is self-explanatory, like what needs to be done to get the job done. Scope of the work. But sometimes it's confusing to some. The renovation industry, people do it differently. I've seen scope of work, they just combine all the tasks, but we need to treat scope of work as like a budgeting tool. Like, it goes hand in hand with the design, right? So scope of work is like installation of the countertops, installation of cabinets, the labor that it's involved in installing the cabinets, installing the tiles. I would encourage people to be as detailed as possible when doing the scope of work, because your estimates, keep this in mind, your estimates, especially for the tradespeople, because I had experience. Like, I've been doing this for almost 10 years, and like every job is different. There's always surprises. People, like, the scope of work is always evolving. The materials, the price of materials, they always change. The labor always change. It doesn't, and you know what? It doesn't go down. It always goes up. So we have to take this in account. Like, moving materials, moving furniture. When you do flooring, we're gonna treat the scope of work as if we as the contractors not doing it. We're paying somebody else to do it. So that's how I see the scope of work. So there's another challenge right there. And without proper design and planning, how can you draft a proper scope of work? Like, say for example, first, let's say we're doing a washroom job, like a bathroom job. First, we're gonna do a demolition. So how much is it gonna take? How long are you gonna throw the garbage? Are you gonna use a bin? After demolition, what are you gonna do? Is there gonna be repair after demolition? Are you gonna do some repairs? Are you gonna do some taping? Are the walls plumbed? There's so many things that could go wrong. So sometimes we need to put contingency in the scope of work. And as I said, estimating, predicting, doing projections is very hard. Nobody can predict the future. It's hard. So what ended up happening is, like, especially, like, I've seen this a lot in my industry, the builder, the contractor, or the handy person, they just give a number, and they didn't budget out, they didn't have a plan, they didn't have design, and they just they don't have a scope of work. And you know what, they run out of money. Once they run out of money, they're going to complain to the client, and the client, they're going to say, tell the guy, oh, Mr. or Mrs. Client, we run out of money, you're out of budget. So there's, you know where the conflict is coming from? This is when this conflict starts. When you don't have a proper scope of work, and you don't have, I'm gonna discuss maybe in the contract after this, how you draft a proper contract, because this is a good segue for the next part, because these three are critical. Was the first one design and planning phase. Second is the scope of work. The third is the contract. So the contract, it goes hand in hand with the scope of work, because there in the contract you're gonna put the details on how you're gonna get paid. So we call it progress billing, like all the nuances of the build. So you can lay it down in a contract, explain it to your clients. So nothing is missing. The last but not the least is the contract. This probably is the most important part of the document that both parties need to prioritize, because when you talk verbal contracts, yeah, they're binding, but how can you prove it? That's the thing about verbal contract. It's not what you say, it's what can you prove. So it's better to write things down, all the agreement. Me as a contractor, as a carpenter, I try to lay out as much as everything, my responsibilities, the scheduling, the payment schedule, the start of the job, the finish of the job. Hopefully the client understands what I'm trying to convey, and as simple as the garbage, what garbage is, like the scope of work. Like if it's not part of the scope of work, then they need to get charged extra, additional work. There's a lot of things in that involves a contract, and this is a legal binding document. So it's a protection for both the client and the contractor. Say the client doesn't agree to this, so we can still negotiate on the contract, because we haven't signed it. And me as a builder, as a contractor, if I didn't sign the client, I don't see it as the start of the project. Once the contract is signed, date and delivered, that means we're good to go. I'm gonna start buying materials, but first it's laid out in the contract that I need a down payment, the payment schedule, the holdback is like 10%. They call it holdback because say me as a builder, as like sometimes most often than not, like there's a deficiency on the work, so there's a 10% holdback. That way the client can hold the money 10%, then he can check if there's discrepancy in my work. And there's a lot of things that you can they can download templates online. But yeah, without a contract, it's hard to, it's a contractual agreement, so it's a binding. And even it might just be a piece of paper, but the contract is a contract. And when it comes to dispute, that's what the court's gonna look at here in Ontario. anything that's $50 above or like $500 below, you can file it in small claims court. But pretty much a contract is very one of the critical documents that you need to have when you're trying to estimate a job.